Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the virtual Ossining Public Library. I'm Diana Lennon, Head of Adult Services, and I am thrilled that we are cooking tonight with Ashley Covelli from Big Flavors from a Tiny Kitchen. And we will talk towards the end or at the beginning, Ashley, about the other upcoming programs for the spring. And we're already working on the fall, so that's exciting. But we usually spend one Tuesday talking about cookbooks and one with Ashley cooking and people who choose to cooking along. So that's tonight. I can't wait because it's yummy food. So Ashley, take it away.
Sure. All right. I'm going to spotlight myself and then the overhead view of my cutting board. So you should see both, unless you're watching the replay, it's only the one view. I'm sorry. One incentive to join live. I guess you get the live overhead of what we're doing. But hi, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Ashley. I live in Ossining, and I've been working on this virtual potluck program with Diana and the Ossining Library for a year and a half now already. It's been a lot of fun, and so we have a theme every month. This month was Italian, and when we met 2 weeks ago, we talked about Italian cookbooks, different dishes we like, local restaurants. Most of the people who attend are local, but not everybody. We're going to make tonight a skillet lasagna, which is my way of making a faster version of a very time-intensive, layered dish. So everything is going to cook in one skillet at once. Like you put the noodles in dry and everything. It's a really fun recipe. And if you're, you can make it with I'm going to use ground turkey today. You can use turkey, beef, you could use pork. You could use a vegan ground meat substitute if you don't do meat. I prefer Beyond Meat if I'm going to do that. My classes are very laid back, so feel free to ask questions. You can unmute yourself. You can type in the chat. If I'm going too fast, too slow, not usually too slow because I can be a fast talker. So I don't think I've ever heard anybody tell me speed it up a little bit. But so we're going to get started. Like I said, if you're cooking along, make sure you take out a stick of butter. I have just an unsalted stick of butter. It's easier to work with at room temperature, but if you don't, if it's cold, that's fine. We will work with that later. So we're going to do skillet lasagna, a garlic bread that you can do either in the broiler or on the stovetop, and then a creamy balsamic vinaigrette that I made inspired by Capri here in Ossining. It's an Italian pizza restaurant. It's pretty dead on. It's very good. It's like a creamy, it's like a little bit sweet and tangy. And if you happen to eat there ever, I like to dip my pizza crust and my bread also in, like, not just for salad, it's very good for a lot of things. And there's a few recipes on my website that use it. One is an antipasto pasta salad that you toss it in. And then I have some pasta salad skewers and you use it as a dip. So it's pretty versatile and it'll keep in the fridge for a little bit too. Hello, Denise. So if you're cooking along, we're going to get a large, deep skillet with a tight-fitting lid. If you don't have one that has a lid, the most important is that it's a big skillet. You could probably use foil tightly to seal it, but we want the noodles to steam in here, so I'm not quite sure if that would work as well. But a pan with a tight-fitting lid is a very good thing to have. So I'm going to put in a pound of ground turkey. Like I said, you can use beef, turkey, pork, vegan ground meat replacement. And one thing to note, because this has fooled people sometimes. Hi, Denise. Feel free if you have any questions or need me to slow down or anything, let me know. Peel off, sometimes this little piece of paper on ground meat is kind of hidden. Make sure you peel that off. You don't want to cook that in there. It's not very tasty. And the other thing I like to show, and I'm going to bring it over to my stovetop, but you can use a wooden spoon to break it up. But there's this little meat chopper tool that I have. My mom got it for me, I think, as like a stocking stuffer. And you just literally, it's heat resistant. So you put it in here and you kind of break up the meat as you cook. And it works really nicely. And actually, I was going to cook the carrot and the garlic and the onions first in here, and I didn't, but it's okay. We're going to wing it. So normally I would start with that. So before I turn the heat on, let me cut those things up. One of the things I like about cooking is like not feeling too much pressure. Like if you goof something up, if it's baking, it might not turn out well, but I feel like you can kind of work with what you have. If I wanted to get, maybe I'll take it out and put it in a bowl. Should I do that? What do we think? Should I brave it? I do kind of like sweating the, like sauteing the onions and the carrot and the garlic a little first. I just have a small or medium yellow onion. If you have a white one, that's fine. If you have shallots, you can use that. If you have a red onion, that's fine. I feel like yellow onions are the best, like, to keep on hand for cooking and things. I like red onions a lot raw, so I tend to keep those around also. And I think I am gonna pop this out into a bowl just so we can make sure that the veggies get nice and soft. So even people who cook for a living sometimes do stuff in the wrong order.
Ashley?
Yes.
The only thing like that I always like question is when I have like, I know I'm going to do like say onions or something and I have meat, like the grease factor that comes out of the meat, and like, yeah, it's great flavor on the onions, but
I have a trick for that.
Ooh,
I use it, and I'll show you. I use a turkey baster, and I push everything to the side. So I have that, and I have a little heat-proof bowl that I keep. So it's really good for like getting in there and sucking out the fat. But you can, if you have the veggies and stuff that get softened in there with the meat, you can still push them to the side, and you could use a spoon to kind of scoop out the fat
great.
carefully.
Yeah, like
the turkey baster works great. And this was actually how I taught my son about using a turkey baster, because, you know, it seems simple, but you might not think about the fact, especially with hot oil, that you need to squeeze the bulb at the end of it fully first, so that you're not putting it into hot liquid and spurting oil everywhere. I'm just trimming off the tough ends of the garlic. So yeah, there are certain things that you need to like keep in mind when you're if you are showing somebody else how to make something, and you kind of take for granted things that you just do on autopilot. So, all right. So I'm going to heat up about a tablespoon of olive oil in my skillet. I'm going to put it on medium high on my skillet that I've scooped my turkey out of. And then I'm just going to chop my onion and mince my garlic. And then I'm going to add a carrot also. And if you're making a salad and you want it to be like the way they do it at a lot of the Italian restaurants, like the one that I based the salad dressing recipe off of, you could also either grate or peel, like use a vegetable peeler to peel ribbons of another carrot while you're doing the one, and that'll put that on top of your salad. I find, like, at least in my experience, Italian restaurants either have like really, really lovely salads, or it's like the most unripe wedge of tomato and like the core of an iceberg lettuce. So it's kind of nice to be able to do it at home and put whatever toppings you like, or any veggies that you have that you need to use up. And I was actually telling Diana before this, I just bought a cookbook that I checked out at the library first to see if I liked it. It's a new one. It's called Fridge Love. And she has a whole section on making an in-fridge salad bar and prepping different ingredients in glass jars so that you can have them ready to go. And you put them all in a bin and you scoot it out, and then everything's ready to go, like as if you went to a salad bar somewhere else. But just kind of having everything there makes it a little easier than starting from the beginning every time, like, oh, what do I want on my salad? I have to cut these things. So I'm going to try it. I'm going to see how it goes. So as I chop these things, I'm just going to add them to my skillet. Ooh, that was one of those very teary onions. So I've got that. Garlic, you can do 3 cloves. I have 4 because 2 of them are kind of small. And garlic is one of those ingredients. I married into an Italian family, so I joked that it's so that I could have an excuse to eat more garlic and cook with more garlic. But a lot of times in recipes, me and my husband joke about, we call it the Italian multiplier. If it calls for like 1 clove of garlic, we'll double or maybe triple it, but we just really happen to enjoy it. And again, for those of you who joined later, at any time, feel free to unmute if you have any questions, or if you want to chat about something else related, even tangentially, to what we're cooking tonight. I love talking about all types of food, so always open to it. I'm gonna add my garlic into that skillet.
Ashley, I just want to touch on what you just said about the salad and the makings. I've gotten in the habit of putting various ingredients in my mason jars in the fridge.
I'm sorry, I've turned my volume up. I'm having a hard time hearing you. So you've taken.
I gotten into the habit of putting various ingredients for my salad in mason jars in the fridge.
Yeah.
And I love it for certain things, but not for others. I don't know if it's the item that I'm putting in, or certain things last longer than others. So in the future, if you learn about this more and you could give us some advice, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. So actually, that cookbook that I was talking about, it's called Fridge Love, and there's a waiting list for it now. I ended up buying a copy on Kindle. I was on a waiting list for a little bit with the library, but it walks you through all sorts of different ingredients and how to best store them in the refrigerator. How long they last, when you should clean them, like if you should clean them when you bring them home, or if you should wait till the last minute. It tells you it has so much information about everything. And I was mentioning to Diana earlier, I'm just small dicing this one carrot that I scrubbed. I didn't peel it. I like getting a little extra nutrition from the peel, but feel free to peel it if you want. So she was talking about, for her salad bar, her in-fridge salad bar, certain things that don't tend to hold up as well over time, like bell peppers once they're chopped and things like that. She'll put them kind of toward the front, so she uses them first, and then things that are a little hardier, like roasted beets or things that last a little bit longer, she'll keep toward the back of her, but all in one bin. So when she pulls it out, she's really big on usually glass, but she said the glass retains the cold a little longer when you're pulling it in and out of the fridge. But just being able to see everything prepped already, and how that really will help you eat it more easily, because if you have to go searching for things, you're probably not as likely to eat them. But just see, onion, carrot, garlic. I'm going to add a half a teaspoon.
Book again? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
The name of the book again? I'm sorry.
It's called Fridge Love.
Fridge Love.
I'm ordering a copy for the library, but there is a hold list on it, so we're getting our own copy. But yeah, that sounds great.
It's really interesting. And then she's plant-based, so her recipes, there's a full section of recipes too. I have half a teaspoon of kosher salt that I put in there, and then I'm gonna mince about a teaspoon of fresh rosemary. So she's got recipes. Also, she's got tips on, based on the style of your refrigerator, seeing where the airflow comes in, and so knowing which parts of your particular refrigerator are coolest and would be best for storing certain types of items. It's really fascinating. So I'm about halfway through it now, and I'm really getting into the meat of the recipes, but I love that she's got so much information on prepping and storing things, because some things I feel like they should last longer and they don't necessarily. But yeah, I very much have been enjoying that book.
And I always feel like if it's there and ready to go, I'm going to choose it, and be healthier in my choices than if I have to I'm tired and I pick the easiest thing and it's probably not the best thing to eat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm just stirring all of this in together, and I got the rosemary in there now. You can, if you like a little bit of heat, I'm going to add a pinch of red pepper flakes. It doesn't make it really spicy. I have a 10-year-old. He doesn't have a problem with it. Although he's getting into hot like a little bit of spicier things now, which is kind of exciting. So once the rosemary and the pepper flakes go in, just wait till you really smell that rosemary and everything, and then you put your meat in that you definitely didn't put in already and take out. And that's when I'll start going in and breaking it up. Again, you can use a wooden spoon. Just if you're using a nonstick skillet, don't use a metal utensil. It'll scrape the coating off, which is not ideal. So I'm just gonna wipe my board down for a moment here. So the meat or non-meat, if you're using a vegan alternative, you just want to kind of let it brown and keep stirring and using the meat chopper if you have one of those, or using your spoon until everything, it doesn't have to be fully cooked through, but like with ground turkey, you can see it's kind of getting gray underneath versus pink. So I'm just going to keep going until all the pink is looking gray. And I'll show you once some of the fat starts coming up, I'll show you what I do with the turkey baster. This tool also works for, I just was surprised that I liked it as much as I did, because I thought it was just going to be like a one-use type of thing. But you can use it to mash potatoes, egg salad. Like you can use it for other things too, because you know sometimes those potato mashers are a little unwieldy. So this will probably take about 5 minutes to cook up, and then after that, it uses about half a box of lasagna. Usually there's 20 noodles in here. And we're gonna, for this recipe, you need the kind with the curly edge. So these ones are just normal lasagna noodles. They're not called the no boil. That's a different type of noodle. So you want these kinds. And we're just gonna break them into like 1 2-inch lengths. Doesn't really matter, but this is kind of a fun way to, my son loves doing this part when he helps me make this. You just kind of snap it into little pieces, and we're going to sprinkle it on top of the meat mixture. And they don't have to be even. Like the whole point of this, it's like very rustic. And I like that you can kind of do parts while the other parts are cooking. I often, when I make this, I'll make this, and I love making garlic bread with it because I like dipping it in the sauce, but I don't always make the salad dressing. It's just nice if you want to add a little more veggies in there. So I think this time my lasagna box had 19 noodles, and I made this recipe a few weeks ago. So I'm gonna live on the edge once again and cook it with only 9 noodles today. But I like letting people know that you don't have to think the recipe is completely going to go off the rails just because one thing is slightly off, or you know, sometimes swapping a different herb can work. If you don't have rosemary, you don't like rosemary, you don't need to use it. I bought, this is a tip that I like. I bought this, it's a roasting blend of herbs. So instead of buying a full package of rosemary, which it's a very strong flavor and I don't use it a ton, I didn't want to have a whole package of it. So I bought this roasting blend, which is rosemary, Italian, parsley, and thyme. So when I was figuring out what I was going to cook this week, I found a few other recipes that use the other bits, and just makes it, I try to cut out food waste where I can. So that's one way to do it. There's another blend that's those, I think it's called a poultry blend, usually. I got that at Stop and Shop, but most stores have them in the produce section. The poultry blend has sage instead of parsley. And sage is another one, fresh sage is another one of those ones that's like such a distinct flavor that I don't usually use a ton of it when I'm cooking with it. And I'll be planting some herbs in my garden, but I'm waiting till May because I've been burned in the past with like late season frost, and yeah. So my turkey isn't actually giving off too much fat right now, but I'll show you just so you can kind of get the gist. See if I can do this with my noodles hanging out here. So a heat-proof bowl, and make sure I learned this the hard way. Make sure you have a turkey baster or baster. I don't know if they're called turkey basters actually. Just baster with a silicone tip. I used one with a plastic tip and a cast iron skillet years ago, melted immediately. So it's not something you necessarily think of, but it's good to know. And also this one is metal here, so it gets hot. I learned that also the hard way. So I'll just, if you can kind of see here, I'll just tip it as it cooks. And it's so funny because I just made tacos with a package of the same turkey yesterday and tons of fat came out. So you just kind of never know. So squeeze the bulb before you put it in and it just sucks up all that. And then I put it, squeeze it slowly. So again, so you don't get hot liquid oil everywhere. Then I put it in there and I keep an eye on it before I add all the other ingredients. Once it's done browning, if there's a lot more grease in the pan, I'll drain it again. And sometimes even with 1 pound of meat, sometimes this bowl will be like 3/4 of the way full. Sometimes it's just a tiny bit. So one of my friends used to use a paper towel. She would lean it like that and she'd use a paper towel to soak up the grease, which you can do. The other thing I would say is if you have a spoon like a little ladle like this, like a small one, or just a regular spoon, when you tilt it, you can kind of skim it a little easier. And just if you push the meat back with your spoon or spatula, that'll kind of help the grease drain. Was that the longest description of how to drain grease off of meat that you've ever heard? Pretty funny. All right, so while that's browning, I'm going to open I have 2 types of canned tomato. So this one's crushed tomatoes with basil. You can use crushed, you can use diced. Again, sometimes the store only has ones with like a bunch of stuff you don't want in them, or they only have tiny cans. You can go with 2 small cans, you can go with 1 big can. This is 28 ounces. And this one has basil in it, that's fine. I usually try to get ones without anything in it. Just so I can add my own flavors. And then tomato sauce. So it's not the same as pasta sauce, but it's thinner than tomato paste. So I'm gonna open those 2 cans. Should I stir this once more? Okay. Open these 2, and then my meat is pretty much browned now. I'm just gonna sprinkle these broken up noodles directly on top of the meat. Then I'm gonna pour these on top and a little, I'm gonna use white wine. You can use white wine, you can use water. You don't have to use wine if you don't have it. You could use like chicken stock if you wanted to. So just gonna measure that out. So this is an 8-ounce can of tomato sauce and a 28-ounce can of crushed or diced tomatoes. If you get the canned tomatoes that are like the plum ones, you need to break them up because they'll be a little too big. You can either do that like with your hands nice and therapeutically and get squishy, or you could use the meat chopper thing, or you could, use kitchen scissors, just go in the can and snip at it. Either way. And I'm gonna add a 1/2 cup of white wine. And then I have a glass aside for later, after class. All right, so I'm gonna sprinkle those on. And if I was making this for myself and not for, I'm making it for myself, but if I wasn't making it for a class, I would at this point just bring my whole noodles over and break them right into the skillet. Like I wouldn't even have done that ahead of time. So I'm gonna sprinkle these on top. So yeah. Just scattering them on. My son was very excited when he heard what was for dinner tonight. And this holds up really well, like for leftovers too. We add ricotta on at the end, but I usually, when I have leftovers, I'll add like even a little extra just because why not? So noodles, just a mess of a pile on top. Then I'm gonna do the tomatoes on top of that. I'm just kind of spreading it around, but I'm not stirring anything yet. And then I'm going to use my wine in this can just to kind of get the rest of the tomato juice. And then the tomato sauce. So all that goes on top. The noodles are mostly covered, but not all. And then put a lid on it, and we're gonna let it, I'm going to bring it to a simmer. You can do it without the lid on if you want. Since my lid's clear, I can see, so that's fine. I'm gonna leave the heat up where it is for now, which is kind of like medium high-ish. Once it comes to a simmer, I'm gonna lower it, and then we'll set a timer for about 20 minutes. And every few minutes we'll go in and stir. So any of the noodles that are sticking out, they'll get kind of covered back up. And then once that's all cooked, we add some Parmesan, stir it in, and then dollops of ricotta, and then you put the lid back on just to kind of let it steam, and it softens the little like puddles of ricotta. It's really, really good. And it looks very pretty, I think. So
Ashley?
yes.
Would a different kind of cheese work other than ricotta? My daughter cannot eat ricotta. So
Yeah, you don't need to
That
use any.
yeah.
You could use maybe like some fresh mozzarella, could tear
Mhm.
that on top.
Yeah.
It might need a little bit longer to melt down, or if you don't mind if it's not super melted, that's fine. You might, I know some people use cottage cheese in lasagna. My grandma used to do that, but she was not Italian. So I just disclaiming that right there. But you also don't need to have the cheese on it at all if you don't want to. But yeah, and there's also there's some good like vegan alternatives for a lot of these cheeses now. So if you have a dairy sensitivity, or just like one particular type of cheese bothers you, just test one of them out. I think like cashews a lot of times take a big part in those. I'm gonna actually throw a little salt and pepper on this. Almost forgot. It's not quite simmering yet. Salt and pepper up top. It smells like lasagna already. Okay, and then I'm gonna bring over for the garlic bread my butter in a small bowl. We got some bubbles going now, so Alexa, set a timer for 20 minutes. So I turned it down a little higher than low. If this starts like sputtering, you can turn it down a little more when you go to stir it. You don't need to babysit it. Just every once in a while we'll stir. This is 1 stick of unsalted butter that I have softened it. If you didn't soften it, you can microwave it. You could use melted butter. That's fine. I've also seen a trick. It works all right. You can fill a glass like this with super, super hot water, not boiling water, but really hot water, empty it out. And then you take we'll pretend this still has butter in it. You stand your butter stick upright and you put it down over it and let it sit for like 10 minutes. That does help some. You can microwave it at like half power if you really just want to soften it without fully melting it. I think it spreads a little easier if it's softened versus fully melted, but you get good results either way. And then I'm gonna do mine in the broiler. You could also do this on the stovetop in a skillet and just buttered side down, and that'll work fine also. But I'm gonna bring this to the top rack under my broiler. And I'm gonna
Ashley, I'm just gonna jump in. Denise said something very funny that when you said that about Alexa, it started a timer on hers as well.
So we'll have dinner at the same time.
Said yours too. That's so funny. And yes, there will be a recording. We're recording it now. It will be on the website within a few days, on the awesoninglibrary.org website under our digital library LibGuides and then virtual potluck. Okay. And I can try to send that out too.
Thank you so much, Denise. I appreciate
Take care.
that. I do have I do have an email newsletter. If you're not on it, I send out once. So let's see. This is the link if you're interested in it. This is once a week on Tuesdays. I send out an email. Sometimes it's recipes. Sometimes it'll be like 5 ways to use chicken breast. Sometimes it'll be like, you know, some recipe that's gotten a lot of really great reviews, kind of a variety of things, sometimes cookbooks. And then once a month, the first Friday of each month, I do a list of all of my classes because I have classes in different places. So that's that. And then this page on my site is just the events. So if you're ever curious. Oven, I'm preheating my broiler on high. I have an electric oven, so I'm leaving the door cracked. And most ovens will have like, it'll kind of sit open. If it doesn't, if you have a wooden spoon, nothing with plastic, but a wooden spoon, you can stick that in here to kind of prop it open for you. If you have a gas stove, you'll need to, you can leave it closed. The reason is with a gas broiler, the flame is always on, and an electric stove or oven, when it's closed, it kind of thinks it's hot enough and it turns off and it turns on, and it'll take a lot longer to actually cook anything. So I've got melted butter, and I have some, I'm gonna do a teaspoon of garlic powder. I like it pretty garlicky. I've never had any complaints, but feel free to start with less if you'd like. And then you see if next time if you want a little more, but I feel like this tastes like really good garlic bread. And I'm gonna add 2 teaspoons of dried parsley. Sorry, I have my half teaspoon out, so. And then I'm just gonna mix those together, but first I'm gonna stir, and I'll give you a little, I'll move this so you can see what it looks like so far. Okay, so there's the skillet. Just gonna stir it. You'll notice some of the noodles feel a little, they still feel hard, but I'm just kind of stirring it so that the things that were on top move down and vice versa. And right back on the heat. In total, it should take about 20 minutes. Occasionally, depending, like the noodles won't be fully cooked and you might need to throw an extra minute or 2 on there. With this garlic butter, sometimes I add Parmesan, like I'll grate some Parmesan cheese into it. But I'm just stirring it together till it's evenly mixed. And you can use whatever kind of bread you like. I've in a pinch used like hot dog buns before because we had some and I was like, oh, I could use that. You could use a baguette. I have some like sandwich rolls, I think. I like brioche. Brioche is a little sweet, so it's not for everybody. I've got, this is from the Stop and Shop Bakery, mini white sub rolls. And my family can go to town on some garlic bread. It does work all right left over. It's not as great leftover as it is the day of. So you could make as much as you want the first day if you'd like. The garlic butter will save. You can use it if you don't want to make more garlic bread and you have garlic butter left. You could toss it in pasta, put some on top of like a grilled piece of meat. Don't let the garlic butter go to waste. You could also freeze it. You could, wrap it tightly and store it in the freezer. So I'm gonna do 3, and I'm using a serrated knife, so it's the one with the bumpy edge, to just kind of saw back and forth. If you have a really long loaf of bread, you could just do it down the middle, broil it, and then slice it into smaller slices if you'd like, or you could go ahead and I could pre-slice this into more bite-sized chunks now. Doesn't matter when you cut it. You can also do like, if you have, there's like those frozen garlic breads that they're longer than this, but they're cut kind of like that, like so into little individual pieces. So instead of going this way, they're up and down. You could do that. And I'm just gonna like put a thin-ish layer on each piece. Just get it covered. coated. Oh, garlic bread. Sorry, I'm like, garlic bread rolls like this. If you have a leftover pot roast on garlic bread, you could kind of make like a French dip, or you could just do like garlic bread and the leftover roast and some cheese and like let that melt on. Actually, I do when I make French dips. I do make garlic bread. I put the meat on, I put provolone on top, and I melt that on. Very tasty. Very versatile is what I'm getting at. And I personally like the parts that get kind of like extra crispy, but if you notice when you put them in your oven that like one side of the baking sheet, they're getting like not as brown, you might have a hot spot in your oven. So when you take it out, you could pivot it around and put it back in to help them cook a little more evenly. Skillet's easy, you just can't do as many pieces at a time. You would just like medium heat it up and then garlic side down. And every once in a while, just take your spatula and just take a look and see when it's golden. There's no exact science to how long it'll take. All right. So I've got like a little bit left. Like this is enough for me to save like a tablespoon or two in here. So I'll save this, I'll use it for something later this week. It might actually be good even just tossed on like rice to give it a little flavor. I know I get HelloFresh sometimes and they love to throw butter in everything, including the rice, and it tastes very good. So, all right, so this I'm gonna put in, it's gonna be about 3 to 5 minutes under the broiler. Again, I'm gonna set a timer, so if you wanna mute your home robot, Alexa, set a garlic bread timer for 3 minutes. And I like doing that because you can name your different timers if you happen to have one of those. It's super handy because like if you're making a multi-component dish or things you have to time, you can name each timer. So when it goes off, you know which thing she's alerting you about. All right, I'm gonna take the lid off. I'll show you again. Doesn't look terribly different probably, but got some more bubbling going on. Just gonna give it another stir. You can see like the sauce is starting to kind of turn the noodles a little red. All right, put it back on. I once forgot and only stirred it once and it worked out just fine. So less panicking in the kitchen. That worked, thanks. Oh, okay. So our garlic bread's going. We have a timer so we won't burn the bread and forget. Pasta's going. The last part of if you're making this meal is the salad dressing. So this is a creamy balsamic vinaigrette. I actually came up with this years ago for a Stonyfield yogurt. I used their Greek yogurt for it. Super simple recipe though. Going to use in a bowl. You could use a food processor if you wanted to. Or an immersion blender if you have one of those little stick blenders and you put it right down into a jar. And if you did it in a jar, then it would already be in the storage container and that's less dishes, which I always approve of. So on the recipe cards that you got when you registered, it has all the ingredient amounts and everything also. But basically all of the ingredients here except the oil, we're gonna whisk together first and then we'll stream in the oil. So a 1/4 cup of balsamic. And I'm not using an aged balsamic, I'm just a regular balsamic vinegar. I haven't tried it with white balsamic. I don't know why it wouldn't work. It just wouldn't have that brownish color. So when I smell the garlic bread, so I'm gonna check and just make sure. Let's see. I can see my pieces in the back are getting a little more brown, so I'm gonna pivot this around. Like I said, I like mine pretty crispy, but definitely don't want them to burn. So a 1/4 cup of balsamic, a teaspoon of dried parsley, half a teaspoon of dried basil. And if you didn't have one of these dried spices in your pantry, that's fine. Like you could leave one out. You could use, Alexa, stop. Alexa, stop. You could use an Italian seasoning blend. That would work fine. I've been trying to either make my own blends or use what I have instead of buying more. So we're looking pretty nice and golden. I want to put it in for 1 more minute. I just want like a little bit more golden. Alexa, set a bread timer for 1 minute. Those 1 minute ones where you're like, oh, I'll remember. That's when you, for me, forget about it. So I'm just stirring this again. And it's bubbling quite a bit, so I'm gonna turn my heat down a little bit to low. All right. So balsamic, parsley, dried basil, a 1/4 teaspoon of dried oregano. Oregano is a pretty strong flavor. That's why I use less of it, but if you happen to like it a lot, go for using more. And then I put 1/8 teaspoon of garlic powder. Most sets of measuring spoons don't have 1/8 teaspoon, some do. So I'm just gonna fill my 1/4 halfway. A teaspoon of Dijon mustard. All right, now I smell the garlic bread. Oh yeah. Alexa, stop. All right, turn the broiler off. Mustard, like in a jar, like a bottle like this, I always shake first and I open it over my sink in case any water squirts out, because I feel like that happens a lot. Not that it would ruin anything, but it's just kind of gross. And sometimes it gets that little like crusty bit up top. So teaspoon of this. And a teaspoon of granulated sugar. And then the part that makes it creamy is plain Greek yogurt. I have some that I made. The fat content doesn't matter. 3 tablespoons. Just make sure when you're buying plain yogurt that you're not accidentally buying vanilla, because they look very similar in the packages a lot of times. And this, you can use regular yogurt if you don't have Greek. Maybe just start with 2 tablespoons first, in case it makes it a little too thin. And you can turn, like this is yogurt that I made that I just strained and made it a little, you can strain it so that the extra liquid comes out and it makes a thicker yogurt. So I don't buy yogurt anymore, but if you do, you only really need to buy the regular one. You can strain it if you like. All right, 1/4 teaspoon of salt and 1/8 teaspoon of fresh cracked pepper. Seems like a lot of ingredients. It's not really, but it comes together very nicely. All right, and then we're gonna whisk this together. And then we're gonna add a 1/2 cup of extra virgin olive oil. So I'm gonna pour it into my measuring cup, and then I'm gonna stream it in and whisk as I'm streaming it. If you were doing this in a food processor, you could just open the spout up top and pour it directly from the bottle down the spout while the motor's running, and that'll help it emulsify. So just drizzling a little and whisking as I go, and you'll notice it'll start to thicken. And you can store this in the refrigerator, like if you have leftovers or whatever. If you're using it after it's been in the fridge, like overnight or whatever, it might be a little solidified. So you might need to let it sit at room temperature for a little bit before it's drizzleable again. But it's a nice, like creamy, hold it over here for, it's got nice and thick and the oil's mixed in nicely. And that's all there is to the dressing. So I'm gonna clean this stuff up. I'm gonna grate some Parmesan for our lasagna. play kitchen Tetris in here trying to fit things. Gonna give this another stir. Sometimes I like make sure to scrape the bottom a little bit just in case anything is sticking. Okay. So that should be almost done. I usually grate extra Parmesan to go on top at the end. So I need about a 1/4 cup for inside of the lasagna. And then I'm just gonna grate more than that because I'll put more at the table. My son especially loves Parmesan. If you're doing this dairy-free, nutritional yeast, I wouldn't put a 1/4 cup, but nutritional yeast is a good substitute for Parmesan. It comes in usually bags. It's this kind of golden colored powder. And it has the like nutty kind of vibe of Parmesan. It's good sprinkled on popcorn. It's like giving people options, you know. And that stuff, you know, you can keep in your pantry for quite a long time. So I have a chunk of Parmesan. If you've never tried Parmesan, it's really tasty by itself. You can stick the point of your knife down into the wedge and just kind of flick it, and you'll get a little chunk. And it's very tasty. I'm going to use not the super fine side, but the small, not the large holes, just so it'll kind of melt into the lasagna. A lot of times box graters will have measurements on the little container underneath. Otherwise, you can just do it into a pile on your cutting board. It's no big deal. This does not have to be a really precise measurement to go in. I guess while we're winding down with our recipes, I'll let you know that next month's theme is sandwiches. Tuesday, May 10th at 7, we're gonna have our cookbook discussion. So bring cookbooks, check out cookbooks if you like, or just come and chat with us. We'll be talking about all types of sandwiches. I always love hearing what other people are into, other than me talking about sandwiches for an hour, which I can totally do, but I really enjoy, you know, conversation around it. The PDF that'll go out for that, I'm working on now, and that'll have recipes, cookbook recommendations, local places that have great sandwiches. So, you know, Rocky's Millwood Deli will be in there for sure. And then, so that's at 7 o'clock for the cookbook discussion. Alexa, stop. Tuesday, May 24th at 6 p.m. is our cooking class for the sandwiches theme. And we'll be making Vietnamese inspired shrimp sandwiches that have their chilled shrimp. And they'll have a peanut sauce and some quick pickled veggies. They're really pretty. The peanut sauce is one of my favorite things. So those are the ones for May. And then June, our theme is picnic. So getting ready for summer because we'll be taking the summer off from this program. And I'll be back in the fall. And like people are already asking about holiday classes. And I'm like, it's April. Like please give me a minute to enjoy the spring. But I love sharing these recipes with people, and I'm always happy to chat about food and encourage people to cook in their kitchen and not be afraid to try some maybe new things or different things. So I'm gonna take the lid off of this, and I'm gonna see if the noodles are tender yet. So I'll give it a stir. I'll show you what it looks like. You can see the sauce got a lot thicker. I'm just going to take one of these little noodles and very gracefully, since I'm on camera, very gracefully not burn myself while testing a noodle. Put it on the board here. Let it cool for just a second. Ooh, that's very hot. It's really the best way to test it is to just actually try one. It needs another minute or two. I'm gonna put this back. It will steam a little further once we stir in the cheese. And if for some reason, like so much liquid has cooked out, you want your noodles to be a little more tender, you could put in a splash of water and stir it in if you feel like it needs a little something else. All right, we've got that. The only other ingredient, there's basil if you want. The basil is completely optional at the end. And I do a version of this with lamb, and I use mint. That's really nice too. Like fresh mint at the end. I put that the fresh herbs on at the end because things like basil and mint tend to get brown if you cut them in advance and they sit around, which still tastes fine, but just doesn't look quite as nice. So this is ricotta cheese. You can use part skim if you'd like. I like using the whole milk. It's just like really rich and velvety. This is a 15-ounce container and we need 8 ounces, I think. And again, not super precise, but I'll use about half of this container to go on that. So get this guy and we're gonna stir in a 1/4 cup of Parmesan. I'm gonna season it with salt and pepper again on top of I'm gonna season it with salt and pepper, and then I usually do the dollops of ricotta and put a little pepper on top just because it looks kind of nice. So a 1/4 cup-ish of Parmesan right in there. If you were using nutritional yeast, I would say maybe like two tablespoons, maybe start with a tablespoon just to see. You can always add more, but you can't take it out. And it does add a little bit of saltiness. I'm going to stir that in. I'm going to add a little bit of salt. And some pepper. Just stir it all together. And then we're going to dollop the ricotta cheese. I just use a spoon and do little piles. And they'll melt down a little bit. Throw a little pepper right on top here. And then the lid goes back on. And I think I turned the heat off and let it sit. Yeah. So I'm going to turn the heat off. I'm going to let it sit on there, but usually about 5 minutes. And that just helps the steam kind of melt everything down. So while that's going, I would rinse some basil. And you can either cut them or you can just tear the leaves over on top, or if you have small leaves, you can leave them whole. These are not small leaves. Oh my gosh, look at this. Like, that's like a lettuce leaf. Holy moly, okay. And again, there's no very specific amount of basil you need to use for this. If you have extra basil though, I have a really good Italian bruschetta recipe that I learned from my father-in-law who grew up in Italy. I'm pretty sure that was on last week's cooking class PDF. I mean, cookbook discussion PDF. I'm just gonna rinse those off. And then whatever salad toppings you like, you could prep those. I have tomatoes, I have a cucumber. So whatever your family likes. I usually leave the toppings separate and let my husband and son kind of pick what they want. I mean, this is crazy. All right, so I have those just a little dried off to the side. All right, I think I'm ready to do a plate. I guess I'll do my, will I do it on a plate? I guess I'll do it on a plate. I'll build a little salad off to the side. Get some garlic bread. I'm gonna just cut it with this serrated knife again. Should be nice and crunchy up top. Realistically, I will not only eat 2 pieces of this garlic bread. It's very good. Salad greens. I've seen a lot of things even when they say that they're washed, a lot of times if you soak them in a bowl or a salad spinner, you'll see like a lot of dirt and things. So depending on how you feel about that, you might want to give it a rinse, even if it doesn't say to. I know some people also soak them in with a little bit of salt, and that's supposed to help draw out anything that's hiding, if you know what I mean. So any type of lettuce you like. This one, I like this brand, Little Leaf Farms. They have like these little leaves. They hold up really well in the fridge. Like they don't wilt too quickly, and they're this is no pesticides, herbicides, no chlorine baths, which is apparently a thing, and it tells you what farms they came from. So I usually I'll just, if anything's in there, it's organic, I guess, but I'll just usually cover it with water and let it soak while I cut my toppings. Okay. Does anybody have any questions, comments, requests? We have themes picked out through June, but we don't have any picked out beyond that. We've done all sorts of themes in the past. Sometimes it's like we did one that was TV chefs, like TV cooking personalities, which was kind of fun. We've done different cuisines. I'm always happy to research books and recipes for things that you're interested in hearing about. We did a desserts one, and most of them we have recordings if you want to go back to see any of the old ones on the LibGuide on the Ossining Library website.
Yeah, I think I have all the videos up, except maybe, the last one and this one, obviously. So it's really great, yeah, to just check out all the recipe cards are there, and the videos, and everything you need. So the list of books, everything. It's there's a lot of info there. Yeah, so check it out.
And for this, for the cookbook discussion portion of this program that we do, I do a lot of recipe recommendations that fit with the theme. So in addition to seeing different cookbooks, you can find some recipes that kind of fit in with that. I'm gonna do a little bit of salad over here. And where's my dressing? Here we go. Okay. These are like the biggest, I'm in a big produce phase today. The grape tomatoes I got were also pretty large considering. Okay, and then I'll show you the lasagna. Should be all good. Just move this out of the way. We've got pools of ricotta now instead of little plops. And then just gonna tear this a little bit over the top. And I kind of, depending on how many of the dots of ricotta I use, I kind of use those as a gauge on where to dish. So I'll like try to scoop one up to make sure everybody gets some ricotta. Who doesn't want that? So we just scoop it up. And I'm very excited to eat this tonight. I hope if you give this a try, I hope you enjoy it. Like I said, we're always open to any requests and anything that you have.
Ooh.
But
Margaret had a question for you, Ashley, but that looks fantastic.
So yeah, so the shrimp, any type of cooked, like if you have cooked chicken already, like you could grill some chicken and just have it left over. We'll just have you like cut it up into pieces and put it on. It would absolutely be good with chicken. It would probably be good with steak or pork. I mean, the peanut sauce is just really good. But yeah, definitely. And there might be fish sauce in that recipe. So if, let me see, let me check really quick. In the peanut sauce, if there is, you can leave that out. I know there are alternates that don't contain fish. Hoisin peanut butter. No, it doesn't have it. Okay. Sometimes I put fish sauce in there, but Yeah, so awesome. And the class materials will be ready for those soon. You can sign up for them on the Ossining Library website. And then when the materials are ready, they will be sent out. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I wish I could eat this in person with all of you, but I hope you enjoyed it, and let
So
me
do
know
we.
what you think if you do. And if you happen to take pictures and post them online, you can tag me at Big Flavors. And we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you, Ashley. That was
Thank you,
awesome. I
everybody.
can't wait to make that lasagna and the dressing, everything. That was awesome. That's
Thank you
great.
so much.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Have a good night.
Thank you.